tennis friends, welcome to this week's episode of Down the Line TV. I'm Sarah Stone, co-hosting alongside Beti Sekulovski. Today we've got a great discussion about the coach's journey, something that is frequently overlooked because we spend so much time talking about the player. We're joined by Marc Sophoulis and Steve Blundell.
Welcome, Marc.
Thank you, Beti. Oh, and hi, Sarah. Nice to see you again after so long.
Yeah, it's been a while, Marc, but great to see you.
Marc, I want to run through your background at the moment. You're the current coach developer for Tennis Australia. You are the assistant coach and coordinator for Richmond in the VFL. You are the head coach of MITS, the Maribyrnong Tennis School. And you've just started a new program called the Tennis Menu online. Congratulations on that. I know you've worked hard on it. How are you feeling with all the coaching accolades?
No, look, I'm just passionate about coaching, Beti, to be honest. And, you know, whenever you can talk coaching, you can talk to passionate people, it just, it gives you another drive and another bit of motivation, I guess, to continue doing what we do, because obviously it's a very selfless job. And I never do this sort of stuff to get a pat on the back. It's all about, you know, what we do for our athletes. And the tennis menu is something that, yeah, it's been in the making for, I say 4 years, but it's actually been, 20 odd years of coaching and putting together ideas. And that's all it is, putting together 20 years of what I've done on the court into an online platform.
Marc, tell us a little bit about tennis, the tennis menu. Go a little deeper. I don't know enough about it, so I'm excited to learn.
It's literally, at the moment, we've got about 600 on-court drills, basically some technical interventions that we've developed. We've got about another 2,500 drills to film, which I've got written down that I've done over a period of time. We're obviously going to have a holistic program to developing players on the court, different kinds of drills. We've got sports science experts, from data analysts to mobility, flexibility coaches, strength and conditioning, nutrition, right across the board. So sports psychology is another one. So we're just trying to add basically a platform where people can go and get ideas to develop either themselves, or coaches can get new ideas to be able to continually develop their repertoire of drills and so forth on the court. So, over a long period of time, you get to meet so many different people in coaching, and you get so many ideas from everyone. And not every idea on there is my own. It's obviously ideas that people have helped me with, and that's what it's all about. It's a community that we've got that, continually bounces off each other, and it's just some online platform to be able to do that.
Yeah, good for you. Great stuff.
And Marc, did you get inspired by this? What instigated all these ideas to create the tennis menu?
Yeah, it's interesting because, over time when you coach, you're on the court and you do all these drills, and sometimes these drills that you do are amazing, and then all of a sudden over years you forget them. They just slip out the way, and then all of a sudden something reminds you of that drill. And I thought, you know what, I just need to write everything down. I'm just one of those coaches that doesn't do that. And eventually I started writing them down, and I said to a friend of mine, Nick Gissing, I said, Nick, how about we put these on video so I can just show my coaches all the drills because I keep forgetting them. He goes, yeah, sure, it sounds good. So we started videoing them, and then over time it was like, hang on a second, people really like this sort of stuff and they want to see more of it. So we created more and more, and we're 600 drills in, which is super. But yeah, it just instigated from that because I keep forgetting everything that I'm doing, and I think sometimes there's some good stuff. There's obviously some crap that I do too. Don't worry about that. But
we all do.
But you know what? It's like every time I do a conference or I do Coach Ed, people are like, do you have a drill for this? Do you have a drill for that? Do you know anything I can do to solve this? And it was like, you know what? How about I put it on video and I can send it to however many people all at one time? And that was where it stemmed from. And obviously I'm so passionate about giving and giving to others. And when you work so hard, and you guys know because you do exactly like I do, you work so hard, you just want to be able to give your experience to people. And, that's all it is. It's about sharing. I think tennis is notorious for holding back, and I really don't care. I'm here to share, and I'm here to learn off others as well. And that's basically what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Congrats. That's awesome, huge, Marc. That's fantastic. Coaches are always looking for resources. Everybody's always stealing drills, and if someone steals your drill, it's a complete honor. So that's great that you're putting it out there and helping coaches. There is that traditional coach education where you go along, you learn how to break down a forehand or feed a forehand or whatever it is. But that ongoing part is where if coaches don't have a big team around them, they can kind of just repeat the same drills and they can't expand themselves as coaches. So Awesome work. And I'm interested to know a little bit more about who some of your coaching mentors are or have been, specifically in the tennis space, but if there's some that are in other sports, let's hear about it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be where I am without mentors. And I think we're all the same. I think there's, a lot of credit in people's development has to go to the ones that probably are the role models for us. And so growing up, I was coached by Michael Barak, who at the age of 7, I started with. I'm now 38 and I still work with him. And, we've had a great relationship for so many years. So he's been obviously the number one mentor in my life as well as my coaching. I've had numerous ones in AFL, which I don't think I can name all of them, but I guess Craig McRae and Tim Clark are probably two guys that have really guided me to become a much better coach than what I was. I've still got a lot of areas for improvement, but those guys have been phenomenal. And everyone at the Richmond Football Club, I couldn't speak highly enough of them from a mentoring perspective. All those guys have been outstanding. And I think we touched on it before we even came on, but I've had a lot to do with coaches on the tour, and I've basically watched a lot of them. A lot of them haven't directly mentored me, but by their actions, you generally learn what they're doing. So someone like Patrick Moratoglu is someone who, I've watched over so many years. I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago, I took a player over to his academy when he was just starting to become a little bit bigger, and just watching what he did and what the academy did, I learned so much about coaching and about people and about creating an environment and creating good relationships. And he's sort of someone I've always looked up to as a coach and continually do that. Look, there's so many people that I've learned from that, probably don't see themselves as my mentor, but yourself, Beti, and Steve Blundell, and those sort of people I've learned so much from over the past and continually will.
No, and you can see it, you can hear it in your voice, Mark. You are selfless. I've known you for a long time. But what are some of the things that you learned off Patrick? Because he's been a successful coach and mentor to Serena Williams for many years. He's guided a lot of great tennis players through his academy. What's something that really stood out for you?
Relationships. That was number one. And I think any good coach is able to form a really good relationship with their athletes. But not only that, he's always had time for me no matter what. So, I sent a message a couple of weeks ago because I've sent a player over to his academy just now, and he literally responded straight away. He's so busy. So many people are wanting a piece of him, but to be able to have someone that does that just shows that even though you're not close with them in person, they still respect you and they still got enough time for you. And I think whenever you have someone like that, I think it's really important. And I've always tried to do that with people that message me. I message straight back if I can, and try to make sure that relationship sticks first and foremost in my mind. At the end of the day, everyone needs to make money and everyone needs to, to do their job. But, it's the way people make you feel is the most important. And, I think I've learned so much about that through the guys at Richmond Football Club, number one, and Patrick Moratoglu, obviously that. And Michael Barak is another one that, has always valued relationships over anything else. So, those sort of people have mentored me and guided me to become who I am today. And, I value relationships more than anything.
Yeah.
Mark, you work with a lot of different players, standards, on tour, off tour. For a young coach that's at a club and they have aspirations to work on the pro tour someday, what's your advice and what was your path like for you to start coaching on the professional tour?
It's a great question. There's so many coaches that want to do that sort of job.
Exactly.
Out there on the tour, there's heaps of them, and I was one of them, one of those enthusiastic young guys who just want to be part of it. And I think the biggest thing is to go and don't worry about the financial side of it. If you're a good enough coach, you'll make money. What coaches need to understand is they need to get experience. Now, you can read every book, you can go on every website, you can go do every course. That doesn't make you a good coach. It's the experience that does. So I'll give you a little story. So Richmond Football Club, I was doing our high performance course, Sarah, back up, I don't know how many years now, but
we can't go too deep into the fact that you finished and I didn't, but I will at the next go around. But that's all right.
It was a long time ago.
I'm looking forward to it.
I enjoyed that time with you that I was briefly part of the course.
Yeah, you were there for a little bit. I'm not sure how long, but it was just a little time. But it was interesting because the last part of it was to do 10 hours of experience at a sporting club other than tennis. And I actually literally sent an email to every AFL club in Victoria and didn't get a response.
Really?
So what I did was I went down to the Richmond Footy Club and I knocked on the door. Actually, first I went to Eston, didn't get anything. Went to North Melbourne, they didn't even get back to me. And I literally was there at the club. I went to Richmond and literally forced my way in the door. They gave me 10 hours of work experience, and then after that, they offered me a job. And I've been there for 14 years. So
Clarko would have let you in.
Yeah, well, I should have gone down to Hawthorn. It was a long drive, yeah?
Things will let you in at the Blues now.
Beti, they'll let anyone in there. Yeah.
Please. Love of God.
Exactly. But you know what? It's at the end of the day, you've got to go and seek this stuff. It doesn't come to you. And if you want to be good, you have to go out and find a way. You know, I'd spent 5 years at the footy club, not getting paid a cent, but spending every day there. You know, I went down and coached players on the tour for free. I hit for nothing. You know, I spent time. All I wanted was an accreditation for the Australian Open when it first started. And literally, that's where it started. It was like, can you hit some balls with me? Yep, more than happy to hit. I just want to get an accred to the Australian Open because I just want to be there. I want to be part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
These days, they just want money. Oh, how much are you going to pay me? Don't worry about the money. You know, the money is irrelevant. It's go out there and experience stuff, create a resume, and people can't ever knock your resume back. And that's how I started. It was like create experiences and time where I could be respected. I wasn't respected. I hadn't done anything. I had no runs on the board. Why would someone pay me to do that kind of a job? So, you know, that's where it starts. And I think if you want to be at that level, you've got to put yourself out there. You've got to sacrifice money. You've got to sacrifice time, and you've got to get experience. And if you don't do that, then you're going to sit in the same spot for the next 20 years of your life, club coaching and coaching, you know, the ones that you don't want to be there with. So, you know, I love doing what I did, and I would not change it for the world. You know, the money was irrelevant to me.
Mark, it's a really interesting point you make. And Sarah, I think, you know, we've had this discussion as well is, you know, a lot of these young coaches that come on and they, you know, they first start up coaching, they want to coach the best, but they haven't got any runs on the board or they haven't really experienced a lot. And they get a little offended when you know, they ask your opinion and you offer the feedback that, hey, maybe you should be taking exactly the path that you've been talking about. And they get a little offended with that feedback. I mean, how do you guys go about that? Because, you know, it's a really fine line between trying to offend someone, but you're really just trying to help them forge a path that allows them to experience, you know, coaching with different angles, that when they do go into a situation where they're working with a good player, they're well equipped. I mean, have you experienced that, Mark, with, you know, coaching in an academy, trying to mentor some of your young coaches? Is that something that's quite common?
Oh, it's extremely common. And the answer to that is, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not going to tell you anything that I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. Sorry, but this is the way of the world, and the world is going to tell you that you need runs on the board. And if you don't get that, that's your problem. I'm going to be honest, and you know what? If someone gets offended or someone doesn't like me because I'm honest, bad luck. That's who I am. You know. And as a coach, what I've learned over the past is you've got to be real. And if you're not real, people see straight through your bullshit. Sorry if I've said the wrong.
No, but, you can roll with that. This is our show.
Yeah. Sorry, it's your show. I'm sorry. But it actually,
no rules.
It frustrates me, right? And I'm sort of frustrated with you guys. Like, I'm a straight shooter, and I'll tell you to your eyes exactly what I mean. And if it offends you, then I'm sorry, but you've got to take the honesty. Yeah. And good coaches and the ones that are actually you see come through, the ones that take that on board and go, hey, you know what? You're right. I've got to go and do this. I've got to go and do it for free. And at the end of the day, you can't please everyone. And I've learned that over time, and I've learned to be just myself and just say it as it is.
Certainly true. There are coaches out there who aren't interested in putting their hand in their pocket. It's interesting when you look at the career path of academia or normal business world outside of the sports world. You have to pay so much money to get your degree. And then you might start on an entry-level job. Yet we've got coaches that will pay for their coach certification. It's not a lot of money in relatively speaking, but that might be $3,000. And then they think, oh, well, they're all in. It's just a free ride from there. And they don't understand that experience that you need when you're on the tour. And one of the things there, Boo, when you were talking about that, not everybody's open to that raw feedback. And I think when we're giving advice, if there's people out there listening, wanting to serve as a mentor, unsolicited advice doesn't go that well. just make sure you're communicating that to somebody who actually is seeking out your advice. And I always say to young coaches, seek out a mentor who's going to give you that raw, honest feedback. Otherwise, you're completely wasting your time. And it's great to see that you've been doing so many great things and you've come such a long way in your career. What's your current situation in the pro space? Are you working with any players? I'm a little bit out of the loop, but I'd love to know what you're up to.
Yeah, I'm still sort of dabbling in it. Having a young family becomes pretty challenging now. So obviously it's more about being home with them and being supportive to the family. That's my first and foremost role at the moment, is dad and husband. It's no longer, trying to shoot for my dreams anymore. It's trying to allow my kids to do that. But I'm still doing some work with Catherine Westbury and have done a bit of work with Sarah Tomic over the last few years, and just trying to obviously mentor them. It's obviously hard for me. I can't travel, or I don't really want to travel. But just to be able to educate and help people like that. And I'm more about helping those players that really need the help. I did a lot of work with Dave Podger in the last few years before he retired. And, guys that, really respect you, that will listen to you. I know Dane. Dane's one of my good friends now, and I helped him with his coaching as well. But, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning, I didn't charge him a cent.
Wow. I know Patrick's done that on and off with some players. That's a big part of the way he approaches his business. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? For me, it wasn't anything but this kid wants to have a go, and he deserves a chance. He hasn't had the opportunity. And I think as a coach, and look, I'm no superstar, I'm no Patrick Moritoglu in any way, shape or form, and I never will categorise myself in that. But, I thought with my experience, I could help him achieve what he was sort of out there to achieve. And, I tried to be there for him and just give him a bit of a pathway and give him a chance and an opportunity. And it's a few others I've done the same with in the past. I mean, look, at the end of the day, yes, I do need to survive too. So you've obviously got to weigh it up a little bit. But, with these girls here, I'm really trying to support them. And, whenever they need something, even from a personal perspective, I want to be there to help them because, tennis is hard, but life is harder. So, I think, I'd rather be there as a mentor in life and get them to understand about themselves. And then hopefully that helps their tennis as well.
Mark, you're surrounded by women in your life, wife, daughters. I'd imagine that your approach to women in general on the court, I'm sure it's probably changed or evolved in some way. I know you coached Arena and Anastasia Rodionova at one point in your career. Yes, you've just touched on you're working with Sarah Tomic and Catherine Westbury, who are really great girls. I know you've helped them a lot. Would you say your coaching approach has changed since the early days working with females, or has it evolved in any way or different shape or form?
Absolutely, and you are right. I'm surrounded by women in my household. I'm surrounded by it everywhere. So it's
ladies.
Yeah,
Girl power.
You know what? You learn so much about it, though, right? And you only learn through it by screwing it up. And I can guarantee you, I did that several times early on. You finish your qualifications, you think you know it all, you go out there, you start coaching female athletes and any athletes in general, and the book just goes out the window. For me, the female athlete space is all about building a really strong relationship and trust. Whenever I coach any female athlete, the tennis is a byproduct. It's not even close to anything. It's more about let's get to know yourself. But the first thing is, I think with coaching females is I need to let them into my world and break down my walls. I need to be vulnerable. I need to show them that I'm willing to give you everything that I do. I'll tell you everything about me. I'm not going to hold anything back. Why? Because then that opens the door for them to be able to tell me the same. And I think any coach that coaches female athletes, and it's any athlete in general, but females definitely, will really bond with you if you let down your walls before they can let down theirs. And that's the biggest thing I've learned over time is the ability to let down my walls and say, hey, come into my world. I'll talk to you about what I do. I'll talk to you about my life, my kids, my wife, my relationships in life, my family, everything, what drives me. And if I can tell you that over time, they'll be able to be comfortable enough and trust me enough to say, hey, I'll let you into my world as well. So I think that's the biggest thing I've learned. Tennis for me is it's the easiest part about coaching. I can coach anyone a skill. I can teach anyone a tactic. I can explain anything in the game. But the hardest thing is getting them to trust that information is correct. And that, for me, is the first point of call with any coaching I do on the female tour.
Well, Mark, you've certainly crushed it as a coach. I mean, that's huge, isn't it, Boo? I think you've done so many things in so many spaces. A couple of those lessons that have come through is that building relationships and also coaches' willingness to work with players, put themselves out there. And sometimes coaching a player for free is not looking that like it's for free. It's think about your business from the perspective of giving that player a scholarship to build the business around you. And that is purely an investment in your company. If we can leave with one piece of advice that you have for young coaches, maybe something that you heard from one of your mentors when you were young, outside of building relationships and investing in yourself, send us home with a perler.
Well, the one that I'm going to give you is, it's not about you, it's about the athlete. Okay? The best coaches in the world are selfless. The best players in the world are selfish. But you need to be selfless to become a good coach. And if you're not, then you're not coaching for the right reasons. It's all about the athlete. The athlete is the one that does the work. You're the one that keeps them on the tracks. You're not the one that does the work that they're doing. So don't ever think that because they're successful, it's all about you. Okay? And that's, to me, the most important thing. You know, I used to be such a selfish coach and a selfish individual. And I've hopefully grown, and I've probably grown more when I've become a parent. And that's probably been the most important growth in my life. But when you think about when you're coaching, it's all about what does the athlete need, not what the coach wants. And, you know, that's about being selfless in your own mindset and allowing that to happen. So, yeah, if you're out there, you know, and you're coaching, don't worry about yourself, worry about your athlete first. And, you know, money will come if you do a good job. So, you know, you've got to understand that. And, you know, the quality in the product is the most important thing.
Great stuff, Mark.
You have wrapped that up so perfectly. I tell you, we went out with a bang on that one, I think, Sarah. What do you
sure did. Always great sitting alongside you, Beti, but fantastic day having you here, Mark. Thanks for sharing your wisdom, and I look forward to maybe I'll be on one of your courses and doing something like that in the future. So enjoy the rest of the lockdown, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
No, thanks so much for having me, both of you. And yeah, thanks for your friendship over the years.
Steve Blundell, welcome to Down the Line TV.
Thanks both Beti and Sarah for having me. Love talking tennis, and Beti, as you know, we do this most days, so it's always fun to talk tennis with both of you.
Absolutely. And Steve, I want to run through your extensive coaching background, so bear with me. It's pretty impressive. But graduated from Louisiana Monroe with a Bachelor of Science, specialist coach at the Victorian Institute of Sport, coach educator for Tennis Australia for many years, high performance qualified tennis coach, was the national pathway coach for the 12 to 15-year-old girls at Tennis Australia. Wow, I need to take a breath, but yeah, well done on all your experiences there, Steve.
No, thanks, guys. You're making me sound old. It's
making you sound like a legend, which you are. So we're so pleased to have you. Thanks for being here, Steve.
No, thank you.
So Steve, I'd like to sort of touch on sort of your coaching journey. You've been involved in tennis for quite a while, and you coached on the tour, especially as a young coach. I want to start off by asking you, what are some of your key insights into coaching some of the female players you've worked with?
Look, while I think you definitely do coach males and females differently in some instances, I think there's a lot of similarities too. I think when I first started out, I was really fortunate to be around some really good people. And I think too, while certainly we all make mistakes as coaches when we're first starting out, I think perhaps one of the few things that I did really well is that I was willing to pay my dues and do an apprenticeship. I was willing to learn. I wanted to do the extra work. I love tennis. I love coaching. And I was also fortunate enough as well to be surrounded by some other really good quality young coaches. So we drove each other to be better. But I think one of the biggest things that benefited me was the people that I was around, and just the mindset of paying my dues and doing an apprenticeship.
Yeah. That's a really good point you make around paying your dues. I think a lot of coaches, when they first start off on the tennis scene, they kind of want to work with the best players that there is, and sort of miss out on some of those key steps in what you would probably classify as an apprenticeship in your early years. And I think you make a really good point there, surrounding yourself around, really good people and learning through that journey. I guess, would you say your coaching approach has changed drastically from those experiences with coaching females now?
I think you become more aware of yourself as a person, and I think as you grow as a person, that also clarifies your philosophy as a coach. I think the two aren't separate. That's one of the biggest lessons I learned early on, is that you need to be who you are, and that also directly links to your philosophy and how you deliver it. I feel that while our delivery must adapt depending on who's in front of us, who we're coaching, the philosophy needs to remain consistent while, of course, always developing it.
I love that, Steve. And I've been really fortunate to spend a lot of time with you, and I certainly have learned a lot off you. And I think you've even helped me shape a little bit of my own philosophies over time. So, no, I think spending the time that I have spent with you, I think I've seen that really clearly from you, from your coaching style.
No, and vice versa, and that's obviously it was great to spend a large amount of time with you in the office every day, and the other coaches. You learn a lot off each other, but you know what? It's also a lot of fun too. So we're fortunate with what we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, was coaching professional players always something that you had aspired to do?
After college, I actually took a year off. I was just burnt out. And as I mentioned, I think I was largely just trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do. So the best thing I did was take a year off tennis, did some other work. Funnily enough, actually worked for the Soccer Federation. So I quickly learned just how much I loved tennis and how much I missed it. So then, that really propelled me back into the sport of tennis, and just coaching in general. Did I have my eyes definitely set on coaching professionals? Absolutely not. I think I was just driven to become a quality coach. And I think that, it's important to be a quality coach at all levels.
So how did it happen for you? I mean, there's a lot of coaches that aspire to get to the pro ranks. They're coaching some great junior players and have no idea what those next steps look like as to how do they get to working with a player on the WTA tour.
I got half an opportunity at the VIS years ago when Michael Robertson became head coach, just on a casual assistant coach capacity, where once again I had to be prepared to pay my dues, do the hard work, sacrifice some salary. So that was my first real insight, and I guess the test for me is how badly I wanted to become a quality coach. So I think being around Michael, but also too, through Jason Stoltenberg, Nicole Pratt gave me an opportunity, as did Christina Wheeler when I was a young coach, who I know you know very well.
Sure.
So being around high quality, passionate people, really it just drove me 24/7 to be the best that I could at becoming a good coach, and also too, I think, for hopefully to help them a little bit as well, and really assist them in their goals.
Yeah. Steve, I want to paint a little bit of a picture for you here. You spent a lot of time with some younger age groups over the last few years, and particularly 12 to 14 or 12 to 15 age group. Just say a young girl, a talented young girl with pretty big ambitions, steps onto your court. What are some of your key insights in that? What are some of the things you want to leave that player with to transition onto the pro tour eventually? What are some key things that you feel need development to be able to make that transition eventually?
Look, I think it largely depends on the age of the player, and we know there's windows of opportunity where we can maximise what we teach them. That's well documented. Fundamentals are key moving forwards, that they have fundamentals that will hold them in good stead at the highest level. But I think too there's some other key things that I'd touch on. I think their ability to have some resilience to, I guess we can call it the daily grind of what's required. Can they tolerate the training? Can they tolerate the competing? We know that it's a very unique lifestyle. So while they're not necessarily experiencing all of that at certain moments in time, I think we start to get insights as they get older as to what they can and what they're willing to tolerate. But also too, I think throughout their journey, one of the big things is the ability to win and lose in a measured way. And I think we've all seen that picture where a player has a great win and then all of a sudden everything's fantastic. The parents are jumping up and down. They're on the phone to the federation making their demands or whoever that may be. But I think it's dealing with wins and losses in a measured fashion over time. Otherwise, I guess my fear is, or based on my experience, that there's a real risk of burnout and staying the journey and staying the course.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that leads me to the next question: is how do you go about educating that player on that process? Because as coaches, you try and put your best foot forward and educate them through the wins and losses and what is, what's a really good win, what's a really good, some losses aren't all seen as bad. So how do you go about, educating the family maybe that's putting the pressure on the coach or the child or yourself?
I think it's putting a really clear plan in place with where they've come from, where they currently are at, and then where they want to go. Be realistic with the phase that they're in terms of competition and development. But I think too, being clear with the parents that this is how we're going to measure it over time, whether that be footage, whether that be whatever it may be. But I think that transparency and clarity and having a basic plan in place, it takes a lot of the emotion, not all of it, but a lot of the emotion out of the conversations in terms of how is this player doing. It's not easy because we all know the investment involved. However, I think that transparency and clarity and having that process, I guess, gives you an opportunity as a coach to be accountable, but also to the parents to be, and other stakeholders to be really clear with exactly what you're working on and how you're measuring it.
Yeah, no, that's really great insight, Steve. And I think it's really good advice for any parents listening. I think that's some really key factors there to take into account within this journey, because it's not an easy lifestyle, as we know, and it's not an easy journey to go through when you're a young kid. You're wanting to win all the time, but then you are going to suffer losses, and hopefully there's some key things there that I think you've touched on that can hopefully help that process. I know we've spoken about this a lot, Steve, and I know it's one of your really, I know it's one of the key topics that you love to discuss is, how do we measure or define competitiveness in tennis? We hear coaches talk about it a lot. Player might not be as competitive as they'd like, or they're sort of, I guess everyone's got a different definition of that. How do you define competitiveness?
I think as coaches and parents and everyone involved, we're always searching for that ultimate competitor. Maybe that's a Leighton Hewitt. Maybe that's a Jimmy Connors. So I think we often view competitiveness as either a yes or no. Either yes, they have it, or no, they don't. However, I think as coaches, we need to delve deeper than that. And with some of the data and some of the amazing aspects of technology we have at our fingertips that can assist us to delve deeper, I think most who play tennis, they love competing in some way, shape or form. Otherwise, they wouldn't play the game. And we have, role model competitors, perhaps, such as a Leighton. But I think that's one thing I really enjoy doing is that, I think there are different types of competitors. Some absolutely train the house down, but the minute you put a scoring system in play, they really struggle and they really break down. Some athletes can be a little lazy, or they don't feel challenged at the start of matches for various reasons, but at 4-all, 5-all, they're going to read the momentum and that they thrive on the big moments.
Yeah.
And then perhaps there's other types of competitors who, at the start of sets or matches, they're red hot. They'll get up 3-1, 4-1. But if their opponent can just, kind of hang in there over a period of time, perhaps it's those 4-all, 5-all breakpoint moments where they really struggle. So I guess in summary, I love analysing competitiveness. I think there are lots of different types of competitors. And I think we just need to be a little careful. It's not necessarily always a yes or no answer as to whether someone is a great competitor or not.
Yeah. That's a great point, and I think that's a really good insight for anybody, because that's one of the key things, isn't it? You see a player, you feel like they might not have the physicality, so their energy on court sort of sums them up as being lazy or maybe not chasing that extra ball, but it just could be possibly that they're incapable of doing that in their current stage. So there's so many different things to factor in. And I think, what are some of the, I want to give you the scenario. You spoke about, if you get those players that get up to a red hot start, they get up 3-1 and all of a sudden there's a little bit of pressure applied and all of a sudden the resilience might not quite be there. How do you build that into a player? How do you create them to be better competitors in those moments, do you feel? What's a way of getting that message across?
Look, I think we can't perfectly replicate a match, but I think we can go a fair way down the line of doing that, where you perhaps create scoring situations where they're just daily playing two scenarios where that is the scenario. Maybe it's 4-all, 30-all, you start with a second serve. Yeah. And as I said, you can't fully replicate it, but I think once you start doing those things daily, I think that's one go-to that, we rarely do that. Often we just roll the balls out and say, play a set, which, don't get me wrong, there's benefits in that too. But look, I also think too, delving deeper into them as a person and how they handle the anxiety of it all, the stress of it all, what processes do they have in place to deal with it? I guess to hopefully help them deal with it a little better. My thoughts on it is, can you totally change a person in that way? Probably not, but can you maximise what they have and give them some skills and processes to deal with it better? Then I think you probably can.
Yeah.
Steve,
absolutely.
The Christina Wheelers of the world are basically easy to coach. That's arguable, but you get a student that comes along and they're diligent, work hard, listen to the coach, etc., etc. That's a dream student. How do you instill those sorts of things into students that are a little lax? What are your strategies to get them on the professional page?
I think players are ready for certain things at different times. So it's reading when they're ready to receive that message, and then how you set it up on court. And also too, I guess, explaining to them. So let's say perhaps I've got an athlete who's really talented but still learning how to work, and perhaps really raw in their ability to tolerate work and to repeat it daily. So I think it's finding aspects of sessions where it's like, right, this is the drill we're doing. You're going to have to work here for a set period of time, and then you're going to get a break. But we are going to work to this level. You can throw in scoring situations, number of balls in a row. That's up to how creative you want to be as a coach. But I think it's instilling it in small sections of time consistently, and then gradually building the resistance or the resilience to the work over time. I think probably one of the worst things you can do is just go out there and smash that type of athlete for 2 hours, because I think you've got to build the tolerance over time with support.
And that continues to happen for some players through the beginning of their professional career. There's many pros out there that are not absolutely professional. How do you think that evolves as a professional? Is there a certain amount you think you already should have learned as a young player, or there are those things that parents need to know that sort of thing because they're looking for their kid to be this absolute professional and don't realise that on the WTA tour, that's not actually what it looks like all the time. What was it like for you travelling on the tour with that professionalism with players?
There are a lot of different personalities. Even I was fortunate enough to spend some weeks on the road with Dasha Gavrilova. Once again, a totally different personality and person. So I think it's picking your moments to deliver certain messages to certain personalities. I think there are some athletes who they just absolutely thrive in the competition. Like with Dasha, if you make it competitive, it's going to be high quality and the intensity is going to be up there. But then with perhaps athletes like that, the challenge may be getting in volume with some of the, let's call it the boring stuff, whether that be a warm up, whether that be doing certain rehab exercises. But I think you've got to find the balance, and once again, just introduce it gradually over time and understand it's often, I think we look for the perfect athlete, the perfect trainer, the perfect competitor, and it's introducing some of the things you need to over time, which may be their weaknesses, but also too thrive on their strengths, and continue to develop those as well.
Yeah. And Steve, what are some of the for any parent out there who has a player that's, you know, I guess again has ambitions to be a tennis player a pro tennis player down the track? What are some of the qualities? How do you pick a quality coach? What are the key things to look for?
Yeah, I think the first thing, I guess, my message to parents would be willing to stay the course and give the coach an opportunity if they're doing the right things. I think it's very easy to jump around based on we know the tennis community, you know, where there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot being invested. It's very easy to jump around to the so-called next best thing. But in saying that, I think there's a couple of basic things that the parents can look for that would perhaps suggest that they're on the right track with the coach they choose. Does the coach know the windows of opportunity and what should be developed and when? Also too, you know, the discussion biological versus chronological age. You know, you've got the perhaps physically immature 13-year-old who has a stack of other skills. Maybe, you know, the kid might be a great competitor, but she's a third of the size of perhaps some other girls who chronologically may be the same age, but things are going to develop differently. And also too, I think the understanding of the journey and being planned with the journey, not just hopping out there with a basket of balls and saying, well, let's just do a little bit of work on your slice. So those are a couple of the key things. And also too, the fact that, do they care enough to put in the extra work? It's not just, you know, rolling out with a basket of balls and delivering a lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's great advice.
Steve, you just mentioned about players going on to the next big thing or the best thing with a coach, hopping around. That's something that we as coaches have to deal with, and it can be almost disappointing for the coach if a player seeks out another opinion or wants to look at working with another coach. How have you dealt with that in the past if you've had players that have moved around? Because I think that's important for young coaches.
Yep, and I think we've all had players who have done that. I find that if you're really clear with what your philosophy is, how you're measuring their development over time, and how feedback is provided, often maybe it's a little stakeholder meeting once a month. Maybe it's a quick little sit down after each tournament. I think if you're really consistent and clear with that, and also too, if you've got some research and data to back your philosophy and where you're going with that player, then I think as a coach, you know you're doing all you can. And often these changes in coach, they're largely emotive, or they can be from parents, and which is understandable based on the level of investment. They just want the best for their player. However, look, I've found over time that obviously myself, like everyone else, we're still learning to do this better, but it's amazing the number of times they end up circling back to come and work with you again or ask the question. So the grass is always greener. Sometimes it's not, but I think it's your philosophy and your professionalism in dealing with that athlete. It's amazing how much they do. Often they do a full circle and say, hey, you know what? We actually did some pretty good work together, and maybe the grass wasn't greener. And you know what? If the grass was greener on the other side, all power to them, and wish them all the best. And hopefully from the time you get with the athlete, you've helped them improve.
Yeah, certainly that is the case. Coaches sometimes fall into that ego space of a little bit of slander and saying a few things that they regret later on. An interesting example is currently Torben Belts is back working with Angie Kerber for the third time now. They worked together. They stopped working together. She came back. She became the #1 player in the world and won 2 slams under Torben. Stopped working with him again. Didn't do so well, and that's that cycle back. And Torben's never had anything bad to say about their relationship. And sometimes players just need a little bit of breathing room. What are your thoughts on that, Pooh?
Yeah, I agree. I think at some point they need to. I think players evolve, they change, they mature at different rates, especially young players looking at. They're obviously trying to reach for something that's pretty successful in their mind. They're reaching for a big goal, and sometimes they feel they've probably had that coach for too long period, and it gets a little stale. Not disrespecting the coach's qualifications or quality of coaching. It could be just a change of environment or voice, and sometimes, yeah, like we see the merry-go-round a little bit, come back around, and they're back with a coach that served them a lot of success. So I think it can be healthy as long as it doesn't become a turbulent thing for the player. I think it can be a really healthy change. What are maybe one or two things from your experience? I know you spoke a little bit about paying your dues, but for any young coach, you see a lot more young coaches getting involved in some of our coaching courses now, again, and who have been past players. What are some of the advice you can pass on to those guys?
It's interesting, isn't it? The number of the coaches who say, I want to be a high performance coach, which, and I understand that, but my preference would be, how do I become a quality coach? Because throughout your coaching career, unless you're very fortunate, you're going to coach a wide variety of ages, sexes, levels. I guess I'd try and encourage the mindset of, are you willing to work hard enough to be a quality coach and then be able to adapt? I think, as I mentioned earlier, surround yourself with the best people you can and pay your dues. Just because you've got a certain qualification, that doesn't mean you still have to. You don't have to pay your dues. So you've got to get out there and do the hard work, and hopefully love it as well. But I think too, be willing to go the extra mile in terms of your professionalism. There's a list of 10 to 20 of the simplest things you can do that we're all aware of, but a lot don't do them. And I think to link who you are as a person to your philosophy. And that's, probably one of the biggest lessons I learned, where we've all probably been there, where, you've had that instance where perhaps you've tried to coach in a way that is not you as a person. And for me particularly, I found the one time that I did that, it did not work, and had the athlete questioning, well, you've got my trust. This is who you are as a person, and why did you start communicating in a different way? Because that's not that's not who I think you are. So, yeah, be who you are.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think spot on. I love the honesty around that, because I think we'd all be lying to ourselves if we haven't done that as coaches somewhere down the track. I think our communication with athletes, and especially with female athletes, is so important. And I think you can tell by the responses. I think we've all had those incidences where we try and be someone we're not, and that doesn't pan out very well. And like you said, it's the trust factor that's so important in a lot of these coaching relationships. So in closing, Steve, I think, I've already learned a lot of your stuff. Again, I continue to learn off you every time we speak. I'd like to thank you for giving up your time today to share some of your key insights and thoughts around, your coaching journey, but also your experiences with some of our younger females within our pathways in Australia. So thank you for being with us.
And thanks to you both and all the amazing work you're doing, not only for women's tennis, but tennis in general. So at a time where it's really needed. So, thanks to you both for your passion and your commitment. And I'm certainly learning just as much off you guys and everyone else. So, no, thank you.